In any great story about a powerful leader, we almost always focus on the person on the throne, right? The king, the CEO. But so often, behind them, there's this other figure, the kingmaker. This is the indispensable advisor, the strategic genius who actually puts them there. They're the ones who see the path to victory when literally no one else can. Today, we're going to dive into the story of one of history's greatest kingmakers and see what he can teach us about power, talent, and loyalty. But before we meet him, I want you to think about this. Seriously, what is the real cost to your organization when a truly brilliant mind is just sitting there, unchallenged, uninspired, totally unrecognized? The story we're about to get into is basically a 2,000-year-old case study that answers that exact question. All right, part one, the unrecognized talent. Every incredible rise to power has to start somewhere. And for our guy, it started in total obscurity, a brilliant mind just waiting for the right moment to completely change the course of history. So, let's meet Fa Zheng. He was born into a good family, and he had this absolutely extraordinary mind for strategy. But his early career? Man, it was just one long story of frustration. He was serving a leader in the super resource-rich Yizhou province who just couldn't see the powerhouse he had on his team. And that leader was a man named Liu Zhang. Now, I want you to think of Liu Zhang as the classic complacent manager. You know the type, well-intentioned maybe, but weak, indecisive, and way more concerned with protecting his own little fiefdom than with actually growing or winning. For a high flyer like Fa Zheng, this kind of place was just suffocating. It's like having a world-class coder stuck doing tech support. So this was the choice Fa Zheng was looking at. On one side, you've got Liu Zhang, representing this comfortable but totally stagnant status quo. And on the other side, a truly visionary leader was on the rise, Liu Bei. And Liu Bei was everything Liu Zhang was not. He was ambitious, he was charismatic, and he was absolutely obsessed with finding and empowering top talent. The contrast, it could not have been more clear. Which brings us to part two, a calculated bet on a new leader. This is the pivot point. Fa Zheng makes a decision that, yeah, you could call it betrayal. But if you look at it from a career standpoint, it was a calculated strategic jump. He decided to bet on himself by betting on a much, much better leader. And Fa Zheng wasn't the only one feeling this way. He and a colleague, Zhang Song, started having what we today call a back-channel conversation. They looked at the whole situation and came to a simple conclusion. Their current boss, Liu Zhang, was going to fail. The real chance for greatness, the shot at actually making a difference, was with Liu Bei. This was basically a top executive getting poached by a way more dynamic, visionary competitor. So Fa Zheng makes his move. He goes to Liu Bei and just lays out the whole vision. And listen to the power in this pitch. He's not just asking for a job. He is presenting a complete, ready-to-go strategic plan. He's showing Liu Bei the keys to the kingdom and telling him exactly how to use them. This is master-level persuasion. And to get why this was such a huge deal, you have to understand what Yi province was. It wasn't just some piece of land. It was the ultimate strategic asset. It was wealthy, it was geographically a fortress, and it was the perfect launchpad for building an empire. Fa Zheng wasn't just offering Liu Bei a new territory, he was offering him the keys to the entire operation, with a full tank of gas and a map to victory. And the result? Oh, it was a smashing success. In 214 AD, guided by Fa Zheng's insider knowledge, he knew the terrain, the politics, the weaknesses of Liu Zhang's whole setup, Liu Bei conquered Yi province. This single move, completely orchestrated by Fa Zheng, turned Liu Bei from a wandering warlord into a major contender for the throne. Okay, on to part three. The battle for a kingdom. So taking the province was just the start. Now came the real test, the absolute climax of Fa Zheng's career, the Hanzhong campaign. This was his masterpiece, where he cemented his legacy by outthinking one of the most powerful warlords of the entire era. The year is 2017. Liu Bei has his base of operations, but a critical territory right next door, Hanzhong, is controlled by his arch-rival, the incredibly formidable Cao Cao. Taking Hanzhong was non-negotiable if he wanted to secure his new kingdom. The problem? Cao Cao's army was dug in, they were veterans, and they were led by one of his best generals. This was the ultimate high-stakes showdown. And the entire campaign really boiled down to one single decisive fight, the Battle of Mount Dingjun. Everything was on the line right here, and Liu Bei, of course, turned to the man who got him this far, Fa Zheng, for a plan. And Fa Zheng's plan, it wasn't about brute force. It was this elegant three-step masterstroke. Okay, step 1, a feint attack. Create a diversion to pull the enemy out of their defenses. Step 2, use that chaos to isolate the enemy commander, a guy named Xiahou Yuan, and lure him into a trap. And then step 3, once the general is all alone and exposed, signal a surprise all-out assault from high ground. It was just perfect. Absolutely brilliant. And it worked to perfection. Xiahou Yuan totally took the bait, he got isolated, and in the charge that followed, he was cut down. With their commander gone, the enemy army just collapsed. Liu Bei had won Hanzhong, and with it, he had secured his kingdom of Shu Han. This victory, delivered entirely by Fa Zheng's brain, is what finally allowed Liu Bei to declare himself king. So Section 4, the indispensable flawed advisor. Now, after a win like that, you'd think Fa Zheng would be celebrated as a hero, right? Well, the story is a little more complicated than that, because while he was brilliant, he was also deeply flawed. Liu Bei rewarded Fa Zheng with just immense power. He was made prefect of the Masters of Writing, which is a fancy title that basically made him chief of staff or COO. He was Liu Bei's right-hand man, second only to the prime minister in terms of sheer influence. And he absolutely used that power. See, Fa Zheng was a guy who never forgot a grudge. He started getting personal revenge on people who had wronged him way back in his early days under Liu Zhang. He got a reputation for being difficult, arrogant, and just plain vengeful. He was what we'd probably call today a brilliant jerk. Naturally, people complained. They went to the famously wise and virtuous prime minister, Zhuge Liang, and asked him to do something about Fa Zheng. But Zhuge Liang's answer is one of the most incredible leadership lessons you'll ever hear. He basically said, look, when our boss was at his absolute lowest point, it was Fa Zheng who propped him up. His contribution was so fundamental to everything we've built that we kind of have to give him a pass. And that just drops a timeless leadership problem right in our laps, doesn't it? How do you manage that difficult, high-performing superstar, the person who breaks all the rules but delivers game-changing results? Do you tolerate their behavior for the sake of their genius, even if it messes with team morale and culture? It's a question leaders have been wrestling with forever. But tragically, Fa Zheng's story ends way too soon. In 220 AD, just 1 year after his greatest triumph at Hanzhong, he died from an illness. He was only 45. The loss was just a staggering blow to Liu Bei, who mourned for days. But the true measure of Fa Zheng's importance, well, that would only become clear after he was gone. A year later, Liu Bei, completely driven by emotion and grief, launched a disastrous war against a rival state. It ended in a catastrophic defeat, one his kingdom never really recovered from. And later, Zhuge Liang said, if Fa Zheng had been alive, he would have stopped this campaign. Or, even if we'd gone, he would have made sure it didn't end in such a disaster. That right there is the ultimate proof of his value, the epic failure that happened simply because he wasn't there. So what is the Kingmaker's legacy then? Well, he was a master strategist who could just see the whole board when others couldn't. He totally understood that critical link between top talent and great leadership. He was, for sure, a flawed genius, but his value was so immense it far outweighed his faults. And in the end, the giant hole he left behind was the greatest testament to just how indispensable he truly was. Which brings us right back to that very first question. History gives us these amazing, real-world case studies. So as we wrap this up, ask yourself, who is the Fa Zheng on your team? The person with the brilliant, maybe unconventional ideas. The one who sees the path forward that you might be missing. And maybe the most important question of all, are you creating a place where they can shine, or a place they'll eventually have to escape?